Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Pear Deck for Google Slides. My name is Wendy Hanaski, and I am an instructional technology coach at the East Central Ohio ESC. And I appreciate the time, whether you're here live with me or if you are just going to look at this a little later at your own leisure. I do appreciate this. Hopefully it'll be helpful and you'll learn a little bit more about what Pear Deck has to offer and how it can make your slides more interactive when you're using it with your students. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. If you wouldn't mind taking a look at some of the housekeeping items, first thing that you'll see is to sign in using the chat if you're here live. And if you could just put your name and your school district, that would be helpful for us down the line so that we know who's here. Also, if you wouldn't mind taking a look at the survey QR code, this is something that we ask that all participants, whether you are here live or whether you're watching it a little later, that you take the survey for us so that we can get some feedback and know that you were here with us today. My email address is over on the right-hand side. So if you want to contact me after this session, we would be happy to schedule sessions with you. This entire project is under a remote edX grant where there are 6 of us that are here to help instructional coaches for the teachers that are in our immediate area. So if you look at the top, you will see our website. You can go on at any time and schedule a session with us. We'd be happy to work with you on your topic of choice. Okay, so what is Pear Deck? Pear Deck is a powerful student engagement tool that allows teachers to make any presentation interactive. And what do I mean by that? So right now we're actually in a Google slide presentation and I'm clicking from slide to slide and you're actively listening. But what if we wanted to take it to the next level and allow the students who are reading these slides to interact with them, answer questions, give feedback in real time so that the teachers can understand if the students understanding the material they're presenting. What I'm going to do is show you how to make these slides interactive. You can stop at any time being the teacher and engage the students with the content that you're actually talking about at that moment. The goal is that every single student can participate using their device. So often when teachers are presenting and they ask a question, maybe 1, maybe 2 students raise their hand, answer the question. But what if you want to go farther than that? What if you want all of your students to give feedback? This tool, being Pear Deck, allows you to do that. So I have the instructions written out on this slide. We're not going to go through it step by step, but it is here for you to reference at a later time so that if you're setting this up, you can do it on your own. But in essence, this is how you get a Pear Deck account. So the first thing you would want to do is go to peardeck.com and you can use your Google account to log in as a teacher. Once you've created that account, then you'll have certain functions available to you within Google Slides. So it's a Google Slide add-on so that you would just simply add the Pear Deck add-on, which we will go through in just a minute. And then those tools that are in Pear Deck will also become available to you in Google Slides within your editing window. So once you have added on the Pear Deck add-on, this is the bar that will come up on the right-hand side of your screen in Google Slides. This is kind of like the control center. So it's going to enable you to make those slides that we were just talking about interactive. So let's take a look at the Pear Deck slide sidebar. If you look at the top, the first thing you're going to see is start lesson. And even though it's at the top, it's actually the last thing that we do. So it's once you've added all the interactive pieces to your slides, we'll then come up and we'll start the lesson. And that's what will send out the code so that the students can join in. Also, they have a template library, and we'll take a peek at that a little later on. But in essence, what this allows you to do is if you don't have your own slides, if you don't have your own presentation and you need some help in a specific topic, you can look at the templates that are built in Pear Deck and use something that they have already made A lot of this content is very timely because a lot of it's current events as well. And you can sort by your own subject area. So if you don't have a slide deck, you can absolutely go into the template and build from something that they already have. The next thing that you'll see is the type of questions that you can add to your slides that is going to make them interactive. So whether it's just a text question, whether it's a multiple choice, whether you're going to ask the students to respond using a number, a website, the draw and the draggable. Now for Pear Deck, that is a free tool that teachers can add into their Google Slides. But like most of these tools, there are an additional amount that you can pay to get the advanced features. So this draw and the draggable option, which we will take a peek at, is in the paid version. So that's just something that you might want to be aware of. Okay, so let's go with the first option that we saw, which was text. Let's say you're working in a slide deck and you get to a slide where you just simply want to ask a question, an open-ended question. You can type that into your teacher view, and what the students will see is simply this text box where the slide will be on one side, the text box will be on the other, and they will type in their answers. Once the answers are complete, over here on the right side, we'll show you what the class will see. So the top text box would be student number one's answer. The middle box would be student number two, and so on. So an example of that would be, maybe as a teacher, or maybe even in this session, I want to ask my audience, what do you want to know about Pear Deck? You're here with me. This is about Pear Deck. So have you heard about it before? What do you want to learn? So I'm asking the question on my slide. And if we made this interactive, the students would see this text box over on the right, and this is where they would add their answer. With one click of the teacher side, I can view all of my students' answers in that grid that we just looked at over here on the right. And we'll see this in action in just a minute. Another example is multiple choice, or Pear Deck calls it choice because it doesn't have to be more than 2 to 3. It could be true, false. It could be 3 options. It's just a choice. So again, what would the students see? They would see their options. In this case example, it's a true and a false, but maybe it could have 3 or 4 different choices. This is just the example I'm showing. And then once we run the results, this is what the class will see. How many of the students marked true and how many of the students marked false. So this is what a real live example would look like for choice. What is your experience level with Pear Deck? Well, look here, there's 4 choices. So the student would see what the question was by the teacher. The student would have the option here of marking what one they feel best represents themselves. Now, remember I said in the upgraded version, the paid version, you have these draggables, and you can see why it's in the paid version because this is really cool. Teachers can create different symbols. In this case, they created a pin because they're using a map. But students are given these pins that are draggable. They can simply click on the pin and move it to the area of what they want their answer to be. So you can see in a geography course, a social studies, or many other things too, why this draggable is fun. And so this is what the students would see. And then once they run the results, all those pins would be layered on top of each other so that they can see the results. This is a geography lesson example. This would be something that you could do here about the hemisphere, which one is experiencing winter. Students can drag their pin to what side they feel is correct. But even at the elementary level, if you're starting to get students to recognize coins and their names, they can drag the name over onto the specific coin. So this is just fun way that students can be engaged instead of just sitting and listening to this Pear Deck slide. So what I'm going to do now is actually pull up a sample slideshow where we're going to add some of these Pear Deck components that we just talked about. So we're going to use the digital citizenship slide deck as my example. And if you think back to those first instructions about getting the Pear Deck toolbar over on the side, remember I said it's an add-on. So once you have built your slideshow, let's say you have one, you're going to open it or you're going to build it as you go, or you get it from that template that we spoke about. What you're going to do is come up to the menu bar, click add-ons, and then click Pear Deck for Google Slide add-on. Now this will be here once you have registered for your Pear Deck account. If you don't have it, then you would have wanted to come to this Get Add-ons. When you click the Get Add-ons, you'll see a number of things. Pear Deck just happens to be at the top for me because that's probably the last one that I installed, but you can search for it. And once it comes up for you, just simply click on it and it will be added to your slide deck by clicking Add-ons, Pear Deck for Google Slide add-on, and open Pear Deck. So it just takes a couple seconds or so, but as you remember in the slideshow we just looked at, here are your tools. These are what you will use as you're working through adding your interactivity to your slide deck. So let's pretend like we're a teacher and we are going to present this slideshow to our students about digital citizenship. So I'm just going to start it, going to go into slideshow mode. And I'm going to go through this just as I would as I was teaching this in my class. So digital citizenship. What is it, students? Well, it's the norms of appropriate responsible behavior in regard to technology use. So what you might want to do is ask the students right at the beginning, like gauge them. What do they know already? Have they heard this term before? What does it actually mean to them? So it asks, what kinds of responsibilities does a good citizen or digital citizen have? You might want to stop on this slide and add a text question, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to come out of the slideshow mode, back into the edit. I'm on slide 3, which is where this question lies. What kinds of responsibilities does a good digital citizen have? And I'm going to come over to my Pear Deck control bar and click on text. Once I click text, it's going to make this interactive slide visible to me. Now, I mean visible in 2 different ways. First of all, if you take a look down at the bottom, you'll see that the little Pear Deck icon is now here, and it says students write your response. So what you will see here is that the Pear Deck has now become interactive for this slide. What you won't see is that text box. And that is something you're going to have to get clear in your head when you're creating these, because the teacher version is not going to show you that box. It's not until you run the slideshow that you'll see what the student actually sees with that text box. The only way you know that the Pear Deck has fully been applied is if you look down here at the notes, it'll tell you this is a Pear Deck text slide. And again, you have that icon. So we'll continue to go through, and I'm going to keep adding my interactive questions, and then we'll run it through the eyes of a student so you can see what this looks like. So the next slide here talks about the responsibilities of a digital citizenship. So I would have stopped my students on this slide and talked about their own thoughts of what makes a good digital citizenship, and then go into the more formal components of what's really said about digital citizenship with the golden rule and the gossip and such. So again, we're the teacher, we're going through these slides. We're going to talk about the golden rule. We're going to talk about not spreading gossip. We're going to talk about specific social medias like Instagram and Snapchat. And these slides here that talk about 2 very popular social media platforms, Instagram and Snapchat, also talk about the age of students. And traditionally, you have to be 13 years or older to even have these accounts, even though in the real world, we know that's probably not the case. So the next slide that I have that I want to make interactive is simply asking the students, doing a poll. How old were you when you first used social media? So in this case, I'm going to use a different Pear Deck option, which is going to be the choice. So I'm on the slide I want to apply that to. I come over and click choice. And now I'm going to fill in the choices that I want my students to see. So the first choice is going to be younger than 10 years old. The next choice is going to be 10 to 13 years old. And the final choice would be older than 13 years old. So I could have added another, I can make these whatever I want, but these are the choices. When the student runs their slideshow, these are the 3 choices that the students will see. So once I've typed in my options, I'm going to click Update Slide. And you can see, again, I got my little Pear Deck icon that says that student's going to choose an option. I can look down in the notes and see what options I have given this. And this kind of tells me, okay, I'm set on this particular slide. Moving down through, the next thing we're going to talk about is what type of information is considered private. So there is a grid about some of the things that students actually share and they shouldn't share, being their name or their city or specifically their address. So these are just some information, but we're going to ask students now on this slide, what type of information do you think is private? And so you can choose what option you want over here at this side. I'm going to make it text again. And because the question is already on the slide, I don't have to type anything. My question is already here. What kind of information is considered private? So when the students open their slide, it'll just be that text box again where they can type it in. But we have applied this. Okay, moving down through, finishing this up. We got the privacy here. The next slide I have is about cyberbullying. And what I have is the basic definition. But in your preparation of creating slideshows as the teacher, you may find really good websites that really work with your slide deck and you want to use as another resource for students. What you can do is incorporate a website directly in this slide using the Pear Deck tool website. So I'm on my particular slide I want to add this to. I'm going to come over and click on the website icon. And at this point, I can simply type in the website that I want to be embedded. You have to be careful because it tells you that all the sites that you're going to type in have to have the HTTPS because it has to be secure. I even had this government site that I was trying to put in last night thinking, well, that's going to be fine, but it wasn't. So something is not secure on there. So you have to make sure your website is secure or else it won't allow you to embed it. So I picked this Wikipedia just for example's sake. You'll see that it does show you a thumbnail here, a preview of the website that you've typed in, and then you can update the slide. Now, when the students run over here on the right-hand side will be that website's front page, and they can actually scroll through the website still being on their Google slide. So that was kind of cool. Okay, so we finished this up, talks about your digital footprint and then a conclusion slide. So really we have worked on 4 different slides where we have added 2 text, a choice, and a website. So when we run this, we should be able to see these options. So now that I'm finished, the next thing we're going to do is come up and click on this Start Lesson. Now, the way that the Pear Deck works is it's going to give a website or a link that will allow students to log in so that your screen and their screen are now going to be connected. When you start a lesson, you're going to have 2 choices. You can make it student paced, and this is if you're not in front of the students live running this slide deck with them, like during a class period. This would just be a link that they can watch at another time. For me, though, the power is that you are doing it in real time so that you can see those answers and discuss them as a class. So we're going to come over and click this instructor paste activity. It takes a second or so, but what's going to happen is it's going to give you the website, the joinpd.com, and this is the key that the students are going to have to type in order to see the content. So you see Pear Deck makes it pretty cute. They give warm elephants magically bother misty bandanas. So I guess it's just a fun way to remember this code. But what I'm going to ask the audience to do, if they don't mind, is go ahead to the Join PD And when the enter code comes up, it's going to be the WEM BMB. Now, at the beginning of every one of these slide decks, and this is a setting, you could turn this off if you want, but it asks students, how are you feeling today? So it just gives them a choice. They can click, or there was a skip button at the bottom. And it's going to bring up the slideshow that we just created. So remember the first slide, we didn't have anything on here. It was just the title page. So what I'm going to do is see if I can put these slideshows side by side. So just give me 1 second. This is the teacher. Okay, so once at least one student has logged in, this will change. It actually did say it was waiting for students, but now it says start class. So I can go ahead and click there. If you are unsure if we're looking at the teacher side or the student side, if you take a look up in the right-hand side, that code that the students needed to log in was listed here. So that's always going to be the teacher side. Also, if you take a look down at the bottom, you'll see that the teachers have their own set of tools. So you can tell we're presenting and you can click from slide to slide. When you click from slide to slide, it will allow you to see the students in real time. So let me move this over. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is click to move to the next slide. Oops. Okay, so as I move to the next slide, what I'm trying to get to is slide 3, because slide 3 is where it asks the first question of the actual students. So if you are on slide 3, you should now see the box that has the question, what can I do to be a good digital citizen? So does everybody see that? And if you do, and you're typing in your response, you can tell on my teacher side that I have 2 of 3 responses. So I can click my little bar that says view responses. So don't post stupid crap and write down copyright information. So that you can see in real time that I can view the students' answers. Up in the upper left-hand corner, there are 2 options of how you can view these answers. There's a grid layout, which kind of looks like this, or there's a list layout that's just one right on top of each other. So once you have stopped and you've talked about this with your class, you can simply hide the responses to get back to your slideshow, and you can move on to the next slide, which, if you remember, was about the specifics of the personal responsibilities. So now as the teacher, I can go through the real ones with the golden rule again and the private conversations and talk about each one of these in detail.
Hey, Wendy, I have a question.
Sure.
When you have the students responding, and let's say somebody added something that was inappropriate, Can
Mhm.
you remove that before you share that? I mean, do you have that option as a teacher?
If I click that hide or that show responses, if it's there, it's going to come up. But I believe you can go in and edit that, but it will show up in that real time if I click to show the responses right then and there.
But if you would have seen something inappropriate prior to showing responses, could you have
Yes.
deleted it?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I can also do something called lock screens. So when I am viewing this, let me go back to the slide that actually had responses. Down at the bottom here, it's called lock screens, and I can lock those. And so students can't move forward. They can't do anything until I allow them to move forward.
So you could lock the screen, because on my side, it says like, your current answer, your teacher has locked responses for the slide, and then your current answer is this. So would that force the student to correct that before you went any further?
Right, exactly. I wouldn't move any forward until that was corrected. And also, just so we can finish out these tools, you get the show responses, what we've talked about a couple of different times, in the lock and the unlock, but there's also this option called new prompt. So as you're presenting, you may realize, I wish I had another question I could embed in here right away. When I click this new prompt, there are those template slides that come up. And so anything that's listed in the templates, I could embed on the fly. So what do you wonder about today's topic? We'll just pick that for example's sake. And you'll notice that this automatically embedded a new slide directly into this slide deck that we're working through. And again, you can show the responses as they're coming in real time. So that's just another option that teachers have if they realize during it that, I wish I would have asked this. Okay, so moving on, our next slide that has an interactive piece after we've gone through Instagram, which was a continuation of the gossip and the keeping your things private, and also how old you have to be. Snapchat also talks about that age 13. So remember when I asked about how old were you when you first used social media, and we chose a choice option here. So you should go ahead and click on younger than 10 years old, 10 to 13, older. So everybody picked older, and that's probably because our audience was not younger when this was created. So everybody's going to be older than 13, which really is the best answer. Although I think there's a lot of middle school children who would not like that is the rule of being 13 and probably ignore that. But yes, so older than 13, that's great, but it is a conversation piece that you can get engaged, and students don't feel intimidated with sharing their answer because it comes up anonymous. So it's only them in front of their screens answering, but it is a way to motivate them to participate in the discussion without having them actually have to raise their hand and be seen and be heard in a one-on-one type of way, which is really the essence of what Pear Deck allows teachers to do in the classroom. So moving forward, the next slide talks about the importance of keeping your information private. You don't share your address, you don't share your email address or your cell phone number. So this Pear Deck slide that we asked the students to do was what kind of information is considered private information. So it was just a text. They can just type in whatever they think, an address, an email, a phone number. Remember, again, we have the grid layout, we have the list layout, so you can see the answers that are coming in, and then you can discuss them. When you're ready to move on, you just simply hide the responses, which takes you back out to the slide deck, and continue on presenting. So this would just be a follow-up of why it's important to protect your privacy. And it takes it back to the cyberbullying slide, where now you should see that Wikipedia website that was embedded within the slide that the students can now read down through and get a good feeling of what cyberbullying looks like, how it can be stopped, and what is there as far as safety guards for students to use to help them. So there's no reviewing of answers on this because it was just the website. And then finally, just finishing out the slide deck, thinking about the future of the digital footprint, and of course, thinking before you post. So once the teachers are finished with the slides, what would be helpful is to have some recording or some analysis of all the student answers that were given. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to click end, and it's going to ask me, do you want to save this? And how about we give it a name? So I'm just going to use this Pear Deck example. And I'm going to save and end the session. Now on the teacher side, you're going to have a couple different options here. The first thing is you could share this with the students, not only the slide deck, but also the responses that were given by each one of the teachers, students. So this link here that you can copy and take out to the website, just paste it in, would bring up the results of what we've just worked on. So we're going to review the work. Also, you have another option of general or generate takeaways. So I'm going to click here so that you can see what this looks like. And again, you can share this with your students if you want. And we can close this. And finally, when you're all finished, you can open the reflect and review. So this is just a way that you can click the students' names. I picked myself here, but you can go down through. One of you guys, since you actually responded. And you can see student by student. So this is just a teaching tool. So you can see it by student and see how it was answered. So once you're all finished, you can just close that. It will take you back to your slideshows. I'm going to go back into our original. And finish out by just mentioning a couple other options that are over here in the Pear Deck Control Center. We did the start lesson, which again was when we were finished with building our slide deck and we wanted to begin. The template library we touched upon. These are just some conversational slides that you can embed in the beginning of a lesson, during the lesson, end of lesson. So the beginning of the lesson, it might ask you, what did you learn from your homework last night? So it's a way to warm them up before you get started because it's at the beginning of the lesson. Or during the lesson, you might want to say, you know, what's a question that your classmate might be thinking right now. So they take the pressure off because it might not be your question. You're going to answer it for, you know, what do you think your classmate might be wondering right now? And at the end of the lesson, just some reflections and things that you can look through. In addition to the template library, there's what they call the content orchard. So this is an additional site that you could go in, and it was what I was talking about with the really current events section, where you can pick templates that were already created. It could talk about real world problems, things that maybe you don't have slides built upon now, but are already here for you. And it comes free with your Pear Deck account. Remember, the tools that we talked about here is the ones that we embedded during our example. There's also audio that can be added, and just some additional how does Pear Deck work tutorials. So I encourage you to just kind of play around, click through each one of these. You can search things specific to your subject area, and you can embed them as you want. But I think hopefully you have seen that this is a really great tool to engage students in real time, to make sure that they understand the content that you're presenting, and most importantly, to get them to all participate instead of just the same one or two hands that go up. And I think if you're a teacher, you know what that phenomenon looks like in class. So to wrap up, I have this slide that's just how can we help you? So remember, we talked about at the beginning that we're a group of 6 instructional technology coaches that are here to help teachers any way we can with the content of your choice. So we encourage you to use a QR code or to click on the link so that you can go onto our website and schedule a one-on-one session with us or a group session. We're open to a multiple variety of instructional methods. So we're here to help, and I hope you found this Pear Deck instructional video helpful. So thank you for coming today. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them. But again, I thank you for your time.